Salvete omnes, this is Gai Iuli Caesaris commentarii de Bello Gallico liber primus, chapter 44, part 2. And Caesar writes, Se prius in Galliam venisse quam populum Romanum. Remember that this is a continuation of the oratio obliqua spoken by Ariovistus, the German king, with whom Caesar is having a little bit of a parley, a colloquium. And in the previous selection, we ended off with Ariovistus saying that it was proof that he was bringing all these Germans across the Rhine in order to defend himself against war with the Gauls, which the Gauls, by the way, had declared upon him. Well, he was defending himself, and the proof of that was that the only reason he was in Gaul was because he was invited. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there. Checkmate. And also because he was gathering forces not to attack Gaul, but to defend himself from the Gauls. Obviously, checkmate. It's a little bit of circular logic there. So, continuing on, we have se, once again referring to, it's the subject of the indirect statement in the accusative case, singular masculine, referring to the speaker, and that is Ariovistus, and the verb is praedicavit. So he himself, Ariovistum, he said that he himself, prius, now prius has this nifty thing it can do where it can, it's prius quam, which can split apart like some cool 80s sci-fi alien thing into its constituent parts, and it can be placed around in different places in a sentence in order to provide emphasis. So it's just before. In Galliam venisse, so in plus the accusative motion towards into, Galliam into Gaul, venisse, venia, venire, veni, ventus. It's the perfect infinitive, it's active, so it shows an action which is prior to the main verb, praedicavit, from the previous selection. So he said that he had come into Gaul, in Gallium, prius quam, before populum Romanum, before the Roman people, he more prius, which is a comparative, and then there's the quam and populum Romanum, than the Roman people. So I was here first. Numquam ante hoc tempus exercitum populi Romani Galliae provinciae finibus egressum. Yeah. So numquam, it's ne umquam, not ever, never. Never ante hoc tempus, ante, preposition, before, takes the accusative, hoc, hic, haec, hoc, this thing right here, tempus, never before this tempus temporis time. Never, it's never been done before. Never before this time, exercitum populi Romani being the genitive of exercitus, possession, where exercitum is going to be the accusative singular masculine accusative subject of the indirect statement. Never before this time had an exercitum, an army of the Roman people, egressum, from egredior, egredi, egressus sum, to egredior, step out, to step out of, to leave. It's going to be egressum esse, because it's a deponent verb, it's going to look passive, please translate as active. That an exercitum, and egressum agrees with exercitum, had egressum esse, had left. From, and notice Caesar does not provide the preposition, it is included in the verb. The finibus, it could be the e finibus egressum, but Caesar decided no. Finibus, ablative, separation, notice the lack of preposition, and then of the province of Gaul. So these are both genitives. Never before this time had an army of the Roman people left the borders of the province of Gaul. Aren't you a little far from home, Italian man? Quid sibi vellet? Quibi, what? Sibi, wellet. Does he wellet wolo, wolo, welle, wolui? What does he, third person singular, the subject here is Caesar, an imperfect active subjunctive. So what does he, Caesar, what does he, wolo, want? Sibi, and it's referring to Ariovistus, of him. What does he want of him? What do you want here? What do you mean? Why are you here? What does he, Caesar, want of him? What do you want of me? Cur in suas possessiones veniret. Why in suas possessiones veniret? Why into the accusative, suas possessiones, suas referring to the subject, Ariovistus, his own possessiones, which is accusative singular feminine, veniret. Why is he coming into his own possessions? Meaning, why is Caesar coming into his own possessions, holdings, real estate, turf? Why are you coming into my turf? What do you want of me? Why are you coming into my turf? Quid sibi vellet? What does he want of him, Ariovistus? Why is he coming into his own, Ariovistus's, territories, possessions, holdings? Provinciam suam hanc esse Galliam, sicut illam nostram. Provinciam, from provincia I, feminine, province, suam, remember the subject will be in the accusative, suam, his own, meaning Ariovistus's, that's the reflexive su part. The agrees with the provinciam. And hanc, see ham there with the k ending. So hic, haec, hoc, the accusative singular feminine, like provinciam and suam. This right here, Ariovistus may even have pointed. The province, it's mine. Hanc, this right here. Esse, the infinitive standing in for est, because this is still, remember, operatio obliqua. Gallium, Gaul. This here, the province, this here, it's my Gaul. Sicut, it's seek ut. Just ut as. Illam, that over there, Ariovistus may have pointed, behind Caesar. Illam nostrum, that over there, far off yonder. If you turn around and if you squint really hard and turn your head to the left and way, way beyond your vision, that's your province way over there. And this hunk right here, this right here, it's my Gaul. That over there, that's your Roman Gaul over there. Meanwhile, the Gauls are wondering, so which Gaul would be our Gaul then? This province right here is his Gaul, just as that is ours. Nostrum agreeing with Gallium is our Gaul. Ut ipsi concedi non apporteret, si in nostros fines impetum faceret, sic item nos esse iniquos, quod in suo iure se interpellaremus. So the ut as normally this would not take the subjunctive here. It's only taking the subjunctive because it's somewhat subordinate here. So in ratio recta, it's just going to take the impersonal indicative. So just as it ought not, that meaning it's not be proper, that it ought not be that it be conceded to he himself. The ipsi is referring to Ariovistus here. Just as it would not be proper that a concession be made, that it be conceded to he himself, a present passive infinitive, that conceding to Ariovistus would non apporteret, would not be okay, would not be proper. Just as, ut, it would not be proper for a concession to be made for he himself, for Ariovistus, if, say, in nostros fines impetum faceret, in nosotros fines, upon our borders, in plus the accusative motion towards, upon our territory, in impetum faceret, he would faceret make an attack. Facio, facere, feci, factus, third person singular, imperfect, active, subjunctive. If, say, he were to make an attack, if he should make an attack, if he would make an attack upon our territory, it's something that ought not to be yielded to him, granted to him. He ought not to be allowed to do this. Just as it would not be proper for a concession to be made to him if he were to attack our territory. Sic item, thus likewise, nos esse iniquos, we, remember we, from Caesar is writing this, and Ariovistus is, Caesar's reporting what Ariovistus is saying. That's why it's oratio obliqua. So the nos refers to the Romani. So when Ariovistus is going to say this in the oratio recta, then that's going to turn into a y'all Romans, vos Romani. And there might be some second person singulars thrown in here where he accuses Caesar singularly, pointedly. You, two. And two in Latin kind of does have this contemptuous usage, which is somewhat limited. Like when you see it, there's usually a contrast. Because it is kind of rude to just, you, accuse someone like that. Quiet, you. I mean, we might think that's rude. You. Like, I have a name. Sic item nos esse iniquos, that thus likewise, in such a way, it would be in the same. It would be the same way if that we were unfair. We were being unfair in the same way. So just as it ought not to be yielded to him, if he were to make an attack upon our Roman territory, thus likewise we are being esse iniquos, unfair. Iniquosaum, the opposite of aequosaum. Aequosaum is level, just, fair. Iniquos, unfair. Thus likewise we are being unfair. And why is that? Quote, because subordinate clause taking the subjunctive, first person plural, imperfect, active, subjunctive. Because in his own iure, jus iuris neuter, in his own rights, his own law, se interpellaremos. So we imperfect, we're keeping, we are interjecting ourselves into his business, into his rights. We are keeping him from his rights. We are inserting ourselves into his rights. We are being unfair because we are inserting ourselves into his rights, are interrupting him, the se being the direct object of interpellaremos. We are interrupting him in the, we could say, the execution of his rights. And remember, his rights, his iure here, is the jus belli, what he calls the law of war. That the victores victis imponere, that the winners, they impose upon the losers, that the conquerors impose upon the conquered. So you Romans, who do you think you are? You Romans coming into my territory, coming into my house, telling me I can't do this? Just as it ought not to be conceded to him if he were to make an attack upon our territory, thus likewise we are being unfair, because we are interrupting him in the execution of his rights, of his use. Quote, as to the charge, now that is, here he's going to bring up what Caesar said in an earlier chapter, that he ought not to attack the Aedui, for the Aedui are fratres. They have been named brothers of the Romans by the Roman Senate. They are allies. And you better not attack Roman fratres, Roman allies. And Ariovistus is going to scoff at this. as to the charge, as to the fact, as to what you said earlier, as to the idea that the fratres a senatu aeduos appellatos diceret, non se tam barbarum neque tam imperitum esse rerum, ut non scieret neque bello alabrogum proximo aeduos Romanis auxilium tulisse, neque ipsos in is contentionibus quas haedui secum et cum sequanis habuissent auxilio populi Romani usos esse. Checkmate. As the charge as to what you said earlier, that the fratres, that brothers, that he, Caesar, said that, as to the charge that he said that brothers, the Aedui, had been appellatos, named brothers by the Senate. That the Aedui, the subject, this is the subject, this is an indirect statement inside of an indirect statement. As to the, which seen as a subordinate clause taking the subjunctive, as to he, third person singular, imperfect active subjunctive, Caesar was saying that indirect statement, the Aedui had been already appellatos esse, perfect active infinitive, had been named fratres, which takes a predicate accusative because its subject is an accusative, because it's an indirect statement, had been named by the Senate brothers. Well, as to what he was saying, the Aedui had been named brothers by the Senate. Well, non se, not se refers to aria vistus, subject accusative, but the indirect statement. Tam is an adverb modifying this adjective barbarum. He was not tan barbarum, barbarosaum, barbarous, so foreign. So he was not such a savage. Tam barbarum. Neque tam imperitum. He was not so barbarous. He was not such a savage, nor tam imperitus aum, which takes a genitive to be experienced of something, and here it's imperitum, to be inexperienced of something. He was not so inexperienced of things, of the way things worked. He was not so unschooled in the way things worked, or we could say he was not so ill knowledgeable of events, because he will go on to define more about what this res rei feminine genitive plural rerum is, and it refers to like news, current events. He was not so ill knowledgeable about current events. Not such a savage, not so ill knowledgeable of current events, with the result that, ut non, result clause, scieret, he, third person singular, imperfect active subjunctive, that he did not know. Notice it's non scieret instead of nescieret. Hey, nice. Neque, and it's going to be coordinate with another neque coming up. Bello alabrogum proximo, in the bellum e neuter, that's bello proximo, ablative in the proximus aum. This refers to the nearest, the closest. So we have the most recent. So it's closest in time. The most recent war alabrogum, and that's genitive plural, of the Aedui. So you have the Aeduos, subject of this indirect statement introduced by scieret. So he was not so ignorant of current events that he did not know, with the result that he was not knowing. He did not know that the Aeduos, subject accusative indirect statement, that the Aedui, in the most recent war of the Allobroges, had auxilium. They had not neque tulisse. They had not ferro ferre tuli latus. They had not borne, they had not given or carried auxilium, aid. They had not brought aid, auxilium e neuter, to the Romanis, dative, indirect object. So what he's saying is that in the most recent war of the Allobroges, which by the way was several decades previous, the Aedui had not brought aid to the Romans. If you're such close allies, why didn't the Aedui help you guys out? If you're such good friends, why didn't I see you at the last party with the same person? Why didn't they invite you, huh? Neque nor ipsos in is contentionibus, nor had ipsos, which is going to refer to the Romans, nor had the Romans in is contentionibus, in is ea id, you're used to this as being eis, contentionibus, contentio, contentionis feminine, in those, notice that it's contendo, contendere, contendi, contentus, so contentio, it's whatever contendo is, the noun form of contendo, fights, in those contentions, so in those struggles, so those struggles quas, relative pronoun, antecedent contentionibus, accusative plural feminine, because it's going to be the direct object of habuissent, and because this is a relative clause, subordinate clause inside this oratio obliqua, the verb will be subjunctive. Hey, look at that. Aedui, nominative plural masculine subject, the struggles which the Aedui habuissent, they had, because it's pluperfect, had, secum, with themselves, between themselves, that's say, the Aedui, and cum sequanis, and the sequani. So they themselves had not in those same, or in those struggles which the Aedui had with themselves and the sequani, had not usos esses. Yeah, this is referring to the Aedui, and they themselves had not usos made use of the auxilio of the Roman people. So they had not given aid to the Roman people when the Roman people fought in the most recent war of the Allobroges, nor had they themselves made use of the aid of the Roman people, meaning nor had the Roman people offered aid to them, to the Allobroges, in their struggles which they had with between themselves and the sequani. So, the secum refers to Ariovistus, which the Aedui had with himself and with the sequani. So meaning that you Romans, if you're such good friends with the Aedui, you did not come to their aid when I was beating them up. When I was beating up the Aedui, where were you guys? So altogether, as to what he was saying, that the Aedui had been named brothers by the Senate. Well, he was not such a savage, nor was he so ignorant of current events that he did not know that neither had the Aedui rendered assistance to the Romans in the most recent war of the Allobroges, nor had they themselves, meaning the Aedui, made use of assistance of the Roman people in those struggles which the Aedui had with himself, Ariovistus, and with the sequani. If you guys are such good friends, you're just not showing up to each other's houses for slumber parties, and I just want to know why. This seems really weird, doesn't it? Debere se suspicari simulata Caesarem amicitia, quod exercitum in Gallia habeat, sui opprimendi causa habere. Debere se, So remember, we're still inside this oratio obliqua. So debere, it ought to be. Something ought to be. Se, subject accusative, indirect statement referring to Ariovistus, he ought to be suspicari, ought to be suspicious. Suspicare, suspicari. He ought to be suspicious that, takes an indirect statement of what he is suspicious of, takes a noun clause. Simulata goes with amicitia. Notice how it nicely has Caesarem snuggled between them. So this here is an ablative absolute, simulata amicitia. Caesarem is the subject of this indirect statement inside of an indirect statement. So suspicari kicks us into another indirect statement, nestled inside an indirect statement, and Caesarem is the subject of that. That's Caesar. We'll come back to the simulata amicitia. Quod, because, going to take a subjunctive because it's a subordinate clause inside this oratio obliqua. Exercitum. So exercitus us masculine, the army in Gallia, ablative location, in Gaul, habeat, third person singular, present active subjunctive, which, or because he habeat, currently, right now, present tense, present subjunctive, has an army in Gaul. Sui opremendi causa habere, he has it. Remember, inside an indirect statement, infinitives are like finite verbs. Well, not all of them, but this one definitely is. He had his army, the one which he has, and because he has an army, the one which he has it for causa, the sake of sui opremendi. Sui refers to Ariovistus, opremendi, gnarly nd thingy. It's a gerundive, because it modifies sui in gender numbering case, like an adjective. It's genitive, it's singular, and it's neuter, or it's masculine. Huh, wouldn't that be funny? It's not neuter, though. But it's masculine, because sui agrees with Ariovistus. For the sake of overwhelming him, oppressing him, or even better, crushing him. So he, Ariovistus, remember he said that he ought to be suspicious that Caesar had an army for the sake of crushing him, because he had an army in Gaul. Why else would you have an army in Gaul, if not to crush me, if not for the sake of crushing me? What are we going to do with the simulata amicitia, ablative absolute? So it could be, the training wheels translation would be with friendship having been simulated, meaning with friendship having been pretended. So there's some sort of deception involved here. There's pretended friendship, that it's on Caesar's part. That Caesar is pretending friendship with Ariovistus so he can get close to him and then stab him. Man, Caesar would know nothing about that. So simulata amicitia, with friendship having been pretended. Would it be temporal? When friendship, after friendship had been pretended? Maybe. So he ought to be suspicious that Caesar, after pretending friendship, had an army in Gaul for the sake of crushing him, had an army in Gaul for the sake of crushing him. Because he had an army in Gaul, he had it for the sake of crushing him. Though probably not temporal, since he had pretended friendship. Although he had pretended friendship, he ought to be suspicious that, although Caesar had pretended friendship, with friendship having been pretended by Caesar, because he had an army in Gaul, he had it for the sake of crushing him. How about conditional? If friendship had been pretended, then the reason for Caesar having an army in Gaul, well, he had it for the sake of crushing him. I kind of like that too. Anyway, Ariovistus is now telling Caesar to his face, I am quite suspicious of you and your reasons for pretending this friendship you have with me. Why else would you have an army in Gaul? And Caesar said, isn't your own argument that you have it for protection? Maybe I have my army for protection for me. No, of course not, screams Ariovistus. Qui nisi discedat atque exercitum deducat, ex his regionibus, sese illum, non pro amico, sed pro hoste habiturum. Qui nisi, qui refers to he Caesar. Nisi is ne si, it's the negative of si, if not, or unless. You could also say si ... known and put known before the operative word in the protasis, but nisi is more common. Qui nisi, unless he, qui referring to Caesar, discedat, third person singular present active subjunctive of discedo, discedere, discesi, discesos, unless he discedat leaves, departs, atque and also, exercitum deducat, he leads his army away, deduco, deducere, deduxi, deducus, third person singular present active subjunctive. Unless he does this, if he does not do this, if this protasis is unfulfilled, then what will happen? Because the protasis has not been fulfilled yet, but what will absolutely future happen? This would stand in for a future indicative in oratio recta, a future more vivid, because this will absolutely happen unless Caesar leaves Gaul. Unless he leaves and takes his army with him from his regionibus, from hic, haec, hoc, these right here, regio, regionis, feminine, able plural, separation, regions, environs, territories. Sese, he himself, aria vistus, subject accusative, emphatically would habiturum esse, future active, subsequent infinitive. He would habiturum illum being the accusative, direct object. Non pro amico, not on behalf of friendship, not as a amico friend, amico si masculine friend, but as a hostis masculine, a singular enemy, habiturum. He, Ariovistus, would hold illum, this stands in for caesarem, accusative. He would hold Caesar, not as a friend, but as an enemy. You could also translate habiturum here as consider. He, Ariovistus, would consider Caesar not as a friend, but as an enemy, unless Caesar, discedat, departs and leads his army out of these environs. You know, these environs which belong to me. This is my Gaul, that is your Gaul over there. Can't you see the line? Quod si eum interfeceret, multis sese nobilibus, principibusque populi Romani gratum esse factorum, id se ab ipsis per eorum nuntios compertum habere, quorum omnium gratiam atque amicitiam eos morte redimere posset. My goodness, how inflammatory. Quod in si, sometimes written as one word, quod si, means but if. But if, on the other hand, but if that doesn't grab you, but if eum interfeceret, eum, referring to the accusative caesarem, pronoun sending in for it, isea id, accusative singular masculine, direct object of interfeceret, third person singular. This is going to be perfect subjunctive active, and the subject is Ariovistus. It stands in for a future perfect in oratio recta, because prior action has to be prior to the main verb. But if he were to have, I don't know, murdered him, wait, what? Oh my goodness, what? Now escalate quickly. But if he, Ariovistus, were to say, murder Caesar, multis, emphasis on the multis, because it's displaced away from the nobilibus, sese, interrupts it, sese, the subject, Ariovistus, emphatically. Remember, if we have a conditional right here, the conditional, the protasis, the if part, the C here and the nisi here and the C here, that's going to be the subjunctive part. And then because this is oratio obliqua, the main part is the apodosis, which has the infinitive. So multis sese nobilibus. Principibusque, nobilibus principibusque, and multis, very emphatically placed away from them. Many, all caps, many nobles and leading peoples, so leading citizens. We're not going to say chieftains here because we're talking about of the Roman people, leading citizens of the Roman people. We could just say leaders. Sese, remember, is the subject here, with multis nobilibus principibusque. Dative or ablative, here it's going to be dative because it's he's doing a gratum for them. He's factorum doing a gratum for many nobles and leaders of the Roman people. Gratum, gratus grateful, welcome, pleasing. It's a grateful thing. He's doing them, facio, facere, feci, factus, a grateful thing. We could say a favor. This is the future infinitive. You're probably used to seeing it as factorum esse, but it doesn't really matter about where esse goes. All that matters is that it's here. There it is. He actually decided to write it. Esse factorum. Future active infinitive shows it's inside the oratio obliqua, shows a subsequent action to the main verb. He would. Hasn't happened yet because, we haven't killed Caesar yet. He would, aria vistus. Remember, he's the subject. He would, and the ending reflects that. Do a favor, do a grateful thing, a welcome, pleasing thing for, dated with adjective. Many, all caps, many, or you could write that in italics, many nobles and leaders of the Roman people. Oh, if he, aria vistus, were to kill him, Caesar. Oh my gosh, if he were to have killed him, then he would do a favor to many nobles and leaders of the Roman people. And then a parenthetical aside, he'd say, this thing that he just mentioned, say, he, aria vistus, subject accusative, ab, takes the ablative, from, ipsis, from they themselves, through eorum nuntios. Well, then it's not really through they themselves. If it's through their messengers, through the per accusative nuntios eorum of them. Compertum habere. Check this out. Not often, but sometimes you do see habeo being used as a helping verb. What? What is this? A Romance language or something? Oh my goodness, the participial form with a form of to have as a helping verb? Ugh, my nerves are shot. All right, so he had it, compertum, learned. He has, oh my goodness, just like in English, he has learned of it. And it's an infinitive because we're still inside the oratio obliqua. He had it learned. He had learned of it from they themselves through their messengers, through the very people, the very nobles and leaders, through their messengers, of course. This very thing, that if you, aria vistus, were to kill Caesar, you would be doing us a great favor. This thing, aria vistus, had learned from the very people through their messengers. Which begs the question, who are these nobilibus principibusque of the Roman people who are sending messengers to aria vistus saying, if you were to kill Caesar, you would be doing us a great favor. We might be well inclined to look towards you. So, who are these people? Or is aria vistus just making stuff up? Anyway. Quorum omnium gratiam atque amicitiam eos morte redimere posset. Quorum, of whom, genitive plural, masculine, going to have an antecedent in nobilibus principibusque. Of whom omnium, all of them, not just some of them, all of them. All of whom, gratiam atque amicitiam. Gratiam, accusative singular feminine of gratia, I feminine. It's the noun form of the adjective gratos aum. atque, and also don't forget amicitiam. So amicitia, I, feminine, friendship. Eos, genitive singular, possession of morte, mors mortis, feminine, death. Redimere is re and emere. It's two, and the D is inserted because you got two vowels there. So it's not re emere, it's redemere. So to emere, buy back. Re emere. You might be able to write buy back. You can just say buy. Purchase. Posset. Possum, posse, potui. Third person singular, imperfect, active, subjunctive. He might be able. All of whose gratiam atque amicitiam, and this is the genitive of possession, possessing the gratiam atque amicitiam. He might be able to purchase the favor and friendship of all of quorum who? Oh, these people, these nobles and chieftains, these people, whose favor and friendship he might be able to purchase by means of eos morte, by means of the death of him, Caesar, by means of Caesar's death. But if he were to kill him, he would do a favor to many nobles and leaders of the Roman people, a thing which he had learned from the very people through their messengers, all of whose favor and friendship he might be able to purchase by means of his death, with his death. Quod si discessit, et liberam possessionem Galliae sibi tradidisset, magno se illum praemio remuneratorum et, quaecumque bella geri vellet, sine ullo eos labore et periculo confecturum. Of course. Quod si, but if, just like up here, sometimes it's written as one word, but if, continuing on these hypotheticals, discessit, pluperfect, third person singular, active subjunctive of discedo, it's going to stand in for a future perfect in oratio recta, because it has to show a prior action to the main clause. But if he will have left, if he will have left, et liberam possessionem Galliae sibi tradidisset, and if he will have handed over the free possession of Gaul to dative indirect object sibi, that refers to Ariovistus, So if Caesar will have left, if Caesar had left, and if he had will have handed over, the free possession of all of Gaul to him, Ariovistus, magno, emphatically placed, just like multis is emphatically placed at the front. Magno se, you can tell it's emphatic because it's far away from the noun it modifies. It's out of place. Like the se interrupted. Instead of saying se multis nobilibus principibusque, it's multi se nobilibus. Multis is kind of weirdly placed. It must be emphatic. Same thing here. Magno se illum praemio. The magno goes with praemio, and it's out of place to emphatically put it there. The se illum, and this is a nice antithesis because this is se referring to the subject Ariovistus, subject accusative, and illum is referring to the direct object, and it's referring to Caesarem, standing in for Caesarem, Caesar. He would remuneratorum, he would remunerate, he would recompense, pay back, he would pay illum Caesar back with a magno praemio, with a big old prize, praemium e neuter, reward, the big old reward. He, Ariovistus, would pay him, future active infinitive, remuneratorum esse. He would repay him with a big prize, if only he will have already left and surrendered, handed over the free possession of Gaul to him, Ariovistus. Then he, Ariovistus, will repay him with a big reward. And also, don't forget, behind door number 3, Quae cumque bella. Quae, it's the quae that agrees with the bella. The cumque is wave of the hand, whatever. Just whatever you like. It's the ever part. The quae bella, what wars? Quae cumque, whatever wars. Quae cumque bella geri vellet, whatever wars he wellet, third person singular imperfect active subjunctive, he wishes geri to be waged. The present passive infinitive of gero, gerere, gessi, gestus, used to the infinitive bellum gerere, to wage war. This is, he wishes whatever wars to be waged. And whatever wars he wishes to be waged? How about an indirect question? What wars does he wish to be waged? Oh, just whatever ones. Sine ullo eius labore et periculo. The sine goes with the ablative ullo, adjective modifying labore, which is also working with periculo. It's sine labore et periculo, joined by the conjunction et. And without labor, toil, et periculum inuder, danger, of him, on his part, Caesar, and it's any, without any trouble and danger on his part, any toil and trouble on his part, confectorum. He would confectorum, coordinate with remunatorum esse, confectorum esse, future active infinitive. It's going with the et. He would remunatorum esse et confectorum esse. He would repay him with a big prize, and he would confectorum finish, bring to completion, accomplish, whatever wars, whichever ones he wished to be waged without any toil, without any hard work and danger, without any trouble on his part, meaning Caesar's part. Whatever wars you want me to wage in this territory, Caesar, I will gladly wage it, because this is, after all, my territory, not your territory. You wish it were your territory, but it's not your territory. Sicut illam nostrum, that is your Gallium over there. Honk, this one, hic haec hoc right here, is mine. Let's look at that oratio recta. Ego prius in Galliam veni, quam populum Romanum. I came into Gaul before the Roman people. Numquam ante hoc tempus exercitus populi Romani Galliae provinciae finibus egressus est. Never before this time has a nominative subject army of the Roman people, egressus est, come from the territory of the province of Gaul. Have they egressus, stepped out of, come from, left from? Quid tibi vis? What do you want? What do you want here? What do you want for yourself? What do you mean for this? Cur in meas possessiones venis. Why are you coming into my possessions, my territory, my environs? Provincia mea haec est Gallia. My province is this Gaul. This Gaul is my province. Sicut illa vestra. That one's over there, yonder. That one, illa, far away. That's y'all's over there. Ut mihi concedi non apportet. It is not proper that a concession be given to mihi, to me, if faciam, if I should make an attack in vestros fines, upon your territory. So likewise, vos estis iniqui. Y'all are iniqui, unfair. Ye are unfair, because in meo iure me interpellatis. You are interfering with me in my own rights, in my own jurisdiction. I have jurisdiction here, and you're interfering with me. As to you saying that the Aedui have been named brothers by the Senate, non ego tam barbaros. I am not such a savage. I am not so foreign. Nor am I so ignorant of current events, of things, of matters, of affairs that I am not aware, that I do not know, that neither did the Aedui render aid, bring aid, help to you could add a vobis if you want, Romans, in the recent war of the Allobroges. You could say the war with the Allobroges. Nor did you guys make use of their own aid, nor this should be ipsos, nor this should be nor eos ipsos, in those struggles which the Aedui had with themselves, with the Sequani, with they themselves and with the Sequani. Remember that utor uti uso sum takes an ablative to make use of the auxilio. I ought to be suspicious that you, Caesar, Caesar, if you have pretended friendship, if friendship has been pretended, that you have an army for the sake of crushing me, because you have it in Gaul. Because you have an army in Gaul, you have it for the sake of crushing me. 2, which is sort of contemptuous, unless you, placing that qui, unless you will have left and you will have led your army away out of these environs, these regions, ego te non pro amico sed pro hoste habebo, I will hold you not as a friend but as an enemy. Quod si te interfecero, but if I will have killed you, whoa, escalated quickly, if I will have murdered you, I will do a favor, something pleasing, welcome, grateful to many nobles and chieftains of the Roman people. This thing I myself have learned by they themselves through their own messengers. And I am able, of all of whom, and of all of whom, all of whose gratiam, favor, and friendship, I am able to purchase by means of tua morte, by means of your, Caesar, death. But if you will have departed, left, and you will have handed over the free possession of Gaul to me, added a 2 there for tradideris, magno ego te praemio remunerabo, I, keeping the word order here, I will repay you with a magno praemio, with a great reward, and I will complete whatever wars you will wish to be conducted without any trouble and peril on your part. My, these are some arguments from Ariovistus, king of the Suebi. I wonder how Caesar will reply, because of course Caesar has to have the last word.